I thought we would talk today on Jews and the News about the coronation of King Charles III that happened on Shabbat, and how that impacted, and the British monarchy in general has impacted the Jewish community. So not just not just how it impacted the Jewish community on Shabbat 2 days ago, but also over the 1,000 years that since kings and queens of England have been coronated at Westminster Abbey. I think since 1066, I think was the first sovereign of England to be crowned there. Over 900 years of tradition there with Westminster Abbey. So I want to. There are a number of ways around this to start talking about. So our Talmud class on Sunday mornings has been studying a section of the Talmud known as Avodah Zarah. So I'm pronouncing it kind of the Yiddish way, and the modern Hebrew way would be Avodah Zarah. But depends on where you put the accent, Avodah Zarah. So Avodah Zarah means idolatry. And the tractate in the Mishnah is the first collection of Jewish law, edited 1,800 years ago. And it's a compilation of oral tradition that was then edited after 300 years. So from 100 BCE to 200 CE, rabbis were interpreting the Torah and developing the whole system of Jewish practice that we know today. And they were developing the whole system of Jewish law. And it was edited in 6 volumes in, like I said, 1,800 years ago. And then for the next 300 years, rabbis were still learning and studying in the same way. And their study of the Mishnah 300 years later became known as the Gemara, edited in the year 500 CE in Babylonia. So the Babylonian Talmud is the combination of Mishnah and Gemara. Okay, so in the Mishnah, in Avodah Zarah, it talks about not just idolatry, which is irrelevant today, but about relations with non-Jews, specifically with idolaters, and then by extension with non-Jews in general. And it talks about, in very strict terms, how it begins by not being allowed to do business with an idol worshiper, because any kind of business with an idol worshiper would, by extension, be promoting their idol worship. So you can't do business with an idol worshiper around their festivals. That's what it is. So not in general, but around their festivals, because you'd be promoting or supporting their festival. Included in, because the Torah says we are not supposed to be idol worshipers, and we're not supposed to allow idol worshipers to live in the land of Israel. Okay, so the Torah is pretty clear about that, and there's no wiggle room. It is quite black and white. When the people of Israel enter the land of Israel to conquer it, to make it the holy for the holy people of Israel, they're supposed to annihilate the indigenous population, who are idol worshipers. Okay, that's a whole other conversation for another time. But about this, I'm getting there into how it's relevant with the coronation. So because of the Torah's very strict rule about being anti-idolatry, and there's a lot of anti-idolatry rules in the entire Torah, and then the rest of the Bible is all about how the people of Israel strayed from God's path and became idol worshipers, and the whole destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonians and the exile to Babylonia is because we were idol worshipers ourselves. So there's a whole anti-idol worshiping sentiment in the Torah and also then in rabbinic literature as well. So we're not supposed to be idol worshipers. We're not supposed to support idol worship in any time, in any way. So the first chapter talks about different ways in which we might not think about it, but we could be supporting idol worship, and we can't do it. One of the aspects of idol worship, and again, the Mishnah from a time period of 100 BCE to 200 CE, that's mainly the Roman Empire, right? The Greeks were there until 67 BCE, and that's when the Romans came in, defeated the Greeks, and the Romans were there through the Byzantine Empire until the Muslims came. All right, so the land of Israel was under Roman control and then Byzantine control from 67 BCE until the 600s when the Muslims came. Okay, and during that time, until the Byzantines, so who was that emperor that converted to Christianity? Don't remember his name offhand, but that was in the 300s. Until the Roman Empire became Christian, they were pagan. And the whole Roman system of gods is a pagan system of gods, right? They took over the temple in Jerusalem until they destroyed it, made it a place of idol worship. So it's them that the rabbis are talking about, not doing anything to allow idol worship to happen and to maintain the holy status of the land of Israel. Okay, so one of the things that we're not supposed to do is celebrate the festival of their kings. Okay, so if a king of an idolatrous nation sets up a festival, whether it's for the king's birthday or some other festival, you can't do business with idol worshipers around that festival, because there's going to be idol worship associated with that, and you'd be supporting idol worship. So now, if you want to learn more about that, watch the recordings of Talmud class that are on my YouTube channel. Just Google Jonah Lehman, look for my channel, and you'll see recordings of Talmud class if you want to learn more about what the Talmud has to say about it. But I'm going to leave that and now talk about, what does idol worship have to do with the coronation of the King of England? So the whole question throughout rabbinic literature after the time of the Mishnah is, how does Islam and Christianity relate to these laws of idol worship? And the question is, when the Talmud translates the term avodat kochavim, is the word used in the Mishnah and the Talmud, worshipers of the stars. So that goes also is either they say avodat kochavim or avodah zarah. So either that is strange worship, meaning idol worship, or worshipers of stars. Those are two terms that are interchangeable in rabbinic literature when it comes to referring to people who aren't Jewish. The censors who collected manuscripts of Mishnah and Talmud had a heyday in going through these terms, thinking that the Talmud is talking about anti-Christianity, and they forced the publishers of Mishnah and Talmud over the centuries to change the word. So is it Gentile? Is it a word for goyim? So you change avodah zarah, avodah kochavim to goyim, or is it Also, does it include a reference to Christianity? Is Christianity to be avoided in the same way that idol worship is to be avoided? Is Islam to be avoided the same way that idol worship is to be avoided? Okay, so that has been a question throughout the centuries, more a question about Christianity than about Islam. Okay, so because of walking into a mosque, you don't see any statues in a mosque. You see artwork, but you don't see statues. There's no depiction of Muhammad there. People aren't worshiping Muhammad. You walk into a church, a Catholic church, not a Protestant church. You walk into a Catholic church, you see Jesus on the cross, and then you see people bowing down. It looks like they're bowing down to Jesus on the cross, right? So for the casual observer, Catholicism looks like idolatry. Jews in Catholic Europe knew better. And Jews in Muslim Europe thought that Catholicism was idolatry. Now, these are Jews in Spain. Spain from about 1000 to 1492 was in transition from Islam to Christianity. So parts of Spain would be Catholic, parts of Spain would be Muslim. And Jews were able to go from one side to the other and serve as intermediaries between the two sides. They knew both languages, Latin and Arabic, and would serve as translators, and they served in the courts of both the Catholic Spain and Muslim Spain. So they knew about each other. So Jews in the Muslim Empire, Muslim part of Spain, might suggest that Catholicism was idolatry, but those Jews in Catholic Spain would say, no, we know better. It's just a representation. They're not bowing down to Jesus on the cross. They're bowing down to what that represents as a symbol for God. Okay, so they know that Catholicism, those Jews from Catholic Spain knew that Catholicism was not idolatry. But that has been a question over the centuries. Is it okay, is it permitted for a Jew to walk into a church? Because walking into a church might smack of condoning idol worship, or might be condoning foreign worship, if not idolatry. So most Orthodox Jews today will not walk into a church, whether there's a service going on or not, because it's just inappropriate to do, thinking that it is maintaining this tradition from the Mishnah and the Talmud that we're not supposed to be seen as supporting foreign worship in any way. Okay, so idolatry to Catholicism to Islam to just an idea of foreign worship in general. So that now, all of that, so I don't have a problem going into church. I don't have a problem going into a mosque. Now, I haven't been into a mosque for a service, but I've been into church for a service. There were times over the years that I would be with the high school kids for a comparative religion class. And I remember once in my other congregation taking the kids to Mass on a Sunday morning in a church just to have them see what goes on there. So I have no problem going into a church. Obviously, you go into church, you don't participate fully like everybody else does, but there's nothing wrong with being, in my mind, and being an observer of it. It's not idolatry. It's just another path to God, and that's how I understand. But so now we get to one of the issues with the coronation of King Charles. So King Charles, so let's hold off on that for a moment, and let's now look at King Charles as the next link in the chain of kings and queens of England from 1066 and their relationship with the Jews. So I'm going to be pulling up something on my internet. You'll still see me, but I won't see you, as I now reference an article that's in Times of Israel. This article is called the royal family's 800-year relationship with Britain's Jews in 7 historical tidbits. So if you look for that on Times of Israel, just do royal family 800 years Jews, the article will come up. And so it mentions, first of all, about King Charles's family, right? So his father, Prince Philip, may rest in peace, is the daughter of the Queen of Greece, is the son of the Queen of Greece. And the Queen of Greece, at the time of World War II, saved a Jewish family in the palace in Athens. So Prince Philip's mother, is among the righteous of the nations. She's considered a righteous Gentile, and Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, has a whole avenue of trees planted in honor of or in memory of those righteous Gentiles who saved Jews during the Holocaust. So she is one of them. So Prince Philip went to Israel and laid a wreath at Yad Vashem and gave honor to his mother there. So when King Charles was Prince Charles, he traveled to Israel for Yitzhak Rabin's funeral and also visited his grandmother's grave. She's buried in Jerusalem. The Greek Orthodox, there's a Greek Orthodox church along on the Mount of Olives, on the slopes of the Mount of Olives, and so King Charles's grandmother is buried there. So there's a relationship that the king's own family has with the land of Israel, and he was consecrated with oil, olive oil, that was supervised in its production by the Anglican Church representative in Israel. So this oil was made, and you can look up articles about that, how the oil was made, the olive oil, what spices were mixed in with the olive oil to make it special, delivered to England and used by the Archbishop of Canterbury in the consecration of King Charles. So there's a connection personally that King Charles has with the land of Israel, okay, and the people of Israel, okay, very, very close relationship. Wouldn't be surprised if King Charles himself might pay a visit, a royal visit to Israel once again. But it's been a difficult history in the past. So the tidbit number 6 of 7 tidbits that the Times of Israel article has, pogrom at the coronation. So at the coronation of Richard I in 1189, Jewish leaders attempting to bring gifts for the new monarch were attacked. An orgy of violence followed, which saw Jews fleeing to the Tower of London to seek shelter. The 12th century chronicler and diplomat Roger of Howden recorded that only those Jews who hid in the royal citadel or in the homes of friends escaped death. The crusade fervor of the late 1180s was likely the driving factor in the massacres, combining with the already present anti-Jewish prejudice, economic resentment, and opposition to the crown's relationship with the Jews. Okay, so the coronation in 1189, over 800 years ago, saw a pogrom which killed many, many Jews. So, part of the coronation ceremony was people bringing gifts to King Charles. So that's just an ancient practice to do to show reverence or fealty to the king. And so the Jews did that, most likely out of political sense, where you just want to make sure that you're in good favor with the king. And then, the Crusades were happening, so they took their lives in their hands by doing that. And then the tidbit number 7, legally, Jews in medieval England were viewed as the property of the crown. Seen as a valuable cash cow, royal officials were cynically charged with protecting Jews from the mob, while also ensuring they paid up arbitrary taxes as and when the king needed them. This uneasy relationship came to a close in 1290, when King Edward I signed the Edict of Expulsion. Jews didn't return to England until the 1650s, when they were invited to resettle by parliamentary leader Oliver Cromwell during England's brief and unhappy flirtation with republicanism. Okay, so that's the history and the uneasy relationship, which just is part and parcel of the long history of global anti-Semitism. Okay, and it gets to just how difficult it is for the casual Jew to visit Europe today. And without, if you know a little bit of history, how difficult it is to be able to walk the streets of any European capital without feeling a sense of, look at what this country did to its Jews 50 years ago, 80 years ago during the Holocaust and beyond. Okay, you can't help going to Barcelona. Any tour of old Barcelona, I've been there myself and know this. I took a Jewish tour with my wife of the old city of Barcelona, and while doing that, saw other tour guides with Asian groups and other groups that were clearly not Jewish, pointing to the same thing with their laser pointer in the wall of the old city of Barcelona, to Hebrew on stones in the wall, because that Hebrew or on tombstones that were taken from the Jewish cemetery in Barcelona that's 700 years old and was leveled, and using the stones shouldn't go to waste. They're good stones. Use them in the walls of the old city. Okay, so that's just one of countless examples you can have of just how the Jews were spat upon, persecuted, killed over the centuries in Europe. And Britain is it is just another example of that. Okay, so King Charles himself, his mother, his family, they're all pro-Jewish. And it was 1917 that Her Majesty's government see it in a letter to Moses Montefiore, saying that Her Majesty's government sees it as a good idea to establish a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. Okay, so in the past 100 years, the British Crown has been friendly to the Jews and to Israel. Now back to the question: can a Jew walk into a church? So the question arose with the chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Mervis, and as to whether he could participate in the coronation ceremony. So King Charles, just to make it a little bit more personal than just the standard coronation ceremony, wanted it to be interfaith. Prime Minister of England is Hindu, or is he Sikh? No, he's Hindu. So he represented, so he had a role in the ceremony as the prime minister, but also as a Hindu in the ceremony. And there are other faiths who are represented in the ceremony itself. So the question that Rabbi Mervis had, he's the chief rabbi, he could answer the question himself, but he consulted with, and this is another article from the Times of Israel. This one is King Charles praised for helping chief rabbi observe Shabbat at coronation. So that's the article from the Times of Israel. So Rabbi Mervis consulted with judges from Britain's Beit Din. So the rabbinate in England has a Beit Din. They do kashrut supervision, and they handle other issues of Jewish law. So Rabbi Mervis himself consulted with the judges of the Beit Din that it was, and they agreed that it was permissible to enter a Christian church on Shabbat out of respect for an invitation from the sovereign. This is a wonderful feature of 21st century Britain, and our king wants to champion the rights of members of all faiths to practice their religion, the chief rabbi added. Okay, so the Beit Din, which isn't usually liberal, it's quite right-wing in its approach to orthodoxy and approach to Jewish law. The Beit Din itself said that it was appropriate for the chief rabbi to enter the church to participate in the coronation. And then on top of it, it was Shabbat. So there's a whole thing. King Charles went out of his way to make it as easy as possible for the chief rabbi to participate. So the problem is, of course, for an Orthodox Jew, how do you participate in something on Shabbat if you can't walk to it? So the king put up the chief rabbi in his palace, 15-minute walking distance away from Westminster Abbey, and provided kosher food for him for Shabbat. And along the way to get to Westminster Abbey, there must have been a synagogue, because the chief rabbi davened before going, davened Shabbat morning service before going to the coronation. So the coronation began, at least television coverage began at 6 o'clock in the morning on Shabbat, our time. So that's 11 o'clock in the morning in England. So I think he had to be in place by 11 o'clock. So he davened early. There are early minyanim on Shabbat. So he davened early in his coat and tails, and then walked over to Westminster Abbey. Now, it just so happens the president of Israel was there too, right? All these heads of state from countries around the world participated, and the president of Israel and his wife were there too, and they also stayed with the chief rabbi to be in walking distance, because the president of Israel is the grandson of a former chief rabbi of Israel, Herzog. So his father, the current president of Israel, his father was a former president of Israel, Chaim Herzog. And Chaim Herzog's father was a former chief rabbi of Ireland, and then made Aliyah and was a chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel. All right, so there's a connection there between the current president, Isaac Herzog, and his family, and the monarchy and the British government. So it all comes around. So so clearly the chief rabbi. Now there was a question. The former chief rabbi, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, made waves. May he rest in peace, when he did not attend somebody's funeral on Shabbat. So that funeral, I forget whose funeral, maybe it was Princess Diana's funeral. I don't know. If you look it up, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs did not attend a funeral. He should have been there, and he didn't. He didn't go out of his way to do it. And I think with the uproar that came from the Jewish community because he didn't go, he realized his mistake politically for not doing it. And that this chief rabbi knew better. And even though he, paid lip service to the Beit Din itself knew better and said, it's okay to walk into the church. If the King of England invites you, you don't turn down the invitation. So that's the thing. So I think that people understand today, getting back to the Avodah Zarah section, that even though it looks like Avodah Zarah, like all the pageantry that went on there, this pageantry just does not happen in synagogue. So it looks strange. So that's Zarah, is the Hebrew word for strange. So yes, it is strange. And there's incense being waved and people dressed in particular way, and the coronation itself and the consecration with oil looks like it's not right, and that you're worshiping the king, and the king as being, and in some language of ceremonies in the past, the king is has something divine about him. So that could smack of idolatry. And so one could argue that it would be inappropriate, especially for a representative of the Jewish community to be to participate in that. But there are other factors at play that have to come into account in order to make this decision. And the chief rabbi realized, you know, it looks like idolatry, but it's not. And it is Shabbos, but I can walk. And for good, to maintain good relations with the ruling government, I better go. And that has been the hallmark of our relationship as Jews with the country within which we live. How do we maintain good relations with the majority government, right? And there are always questions about that within the Jewish community itself. How much do we compromise? How much are we willing to go with the flow? How much are we, or what is the point at which we protest some things that are happening with the government that could, in the process of protest, affect our status as Jews? So in Europe, it's a more questionable status as Jews vis-a-vis the country in which they're living in Europe, and it's a lot more recent about that, what the terrible consequences could be of that relationship. But here in America, you know, there are, you know, we all know our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, when they came to this country, did everything they could as soon as possible to integrate within American society, right? They want to be part and parcel of American society, and would go along and do things that the rest of America is doing, not only not to make waves, but also to be part of American culture, change their names to make it sound more American, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always part of the Jewish psyche that we're always thinking about what is our place in the country in which we're living in relationship to the majority culture. And as Jews, we can't help but think about that. So when we look at Jews vis-a-vis the coronation, it was almost a non-brainer for the chief rabbi to participate in that service, and then to know as well how the personal, intimate relationship that King Charles and his family has had with Israel and the land of Israel and the Jewish people. I think that even more so a reason for the chief rabbi to be there, to participate and hold that up as something to respect and to honor about the king. So that's what I wanted to say about Jews and the coronation. Anybody have questions or comments about this? So next week I'll get to what Jules said before I started recording about the electricity that the Israeli Electric Company, what kind of service they're doing to allow for ultra-Orthodox to use electricity on Shabbat. So look at the Times of Israel today about ultra-Orthodox electricity in Israel. You'll see an article about it, and we'll talk about that next time. So have a good day, everybody, and see you next week for Jews in the News.
Thank you. Thank you.